Yo, it's the Latino Newsletter Podcast. I am your host, Julio Ricardo Varela, and this is a show about us all the time. A special thanks to the generous support from the Latino Community Foundation for Season 1 of this podcast. Learn more about the Latino Community Foundation at latinocf.org. All right, it's the week before the election, and this is episode 14. I don't have any witty references to 14, and I'm not going to pretend that I can invent them. But before we get into this conversation, a little context. Joaquin Cotler, my co-producer, was like, let's do a different type of show the week before the election. And I was like, yeah, let's do a different type of show before the election. And so we are going to do it. We are actually going to talk some election talk in this show, but we're going to go deeper with our guest. But before we introduce our guest, just a quick note of thanks to all of you who have supported the Latino Newsletter in the last couple of days during this entire Puerto Rico joke thing. We see you, we appreciate you, and to all our new subscribers, welcome. We are the Latino Newsletter. Stick around with us. We keep at it. All right, let's get to our guest. I'm going to read from his bio, which I pulled from the Blacklist. This guest, Mando Rayo, I've known for years. I'm so excited to have him on the show. Mando's experience is deep-rooted in Latinx and BIPOC communities, and he's also a 2022 James Beard Foundation Awards finalist. Mando is a digital storyteller, and he uses his Latinx identity to inspire and build bridges through his production company, Identity. What a name. He's worked with PBS ITVS, El Rey Network, Laredo Taco Company, Beef Loving Texans, Whataburger, People en Español, and so many other outlets and sites. Mando shares his stories through food, culture, documentaries, and digital platforms. He's an OG taco journalist. I inserted that. He's a food explorer. He's a street ethnographer. And he's traveled across the U.S. to uncover the tastiest tacos this country can offer, from the Rio Grande Valley in Texas to L.A., to New Orleans, to New York City. He's also the producer and co-author of the books Austin Breakfast Tacos and the Tacos of Texas book by the University of Texas Press. Nice. He has a docuseries with PBS Digital Studios, United Tacos of America TV show on El Rey Network, and the Vitamina T for Tacos, or the Vitamina T for Tacos. It's a children's book series, and Mando's work has been featured in so many places, including Bon Appetit Magazine, the Food Network, NPR, the New York Times, South by Southwest, and also Mando has a podcast called the Tacos of Texas Podcast. Mando Rayo, it's been a while. I'm so excited to have you. Welcome to the Latino Newsletter Podcast. I'm so happy to have you.
Julio, man, I wish we could have some, break some tortillas right now together.
We have, just to put it on record.
You're right. We have.
Yeah, back in the day when it was, when people were creating, what do they call it these days? Content? I thought we were just representing communities, Mando, back in the day with authenticity and truth, right?
That's right. We didn't see ourselves out there and we created our own.
This is episode 14. And, it's a show before the election.
Yeah.
And we wanted to have someone, I didn't want a political person. Not that I don't like political people, and I have plenty of political journalist friends that I could bring on. But I wanted to talk to someone who's been around the online space with Latinos since forever, like me. Give me your bird's eye 360 view of where we are as a community when it comes to political power. I feel like we've cracked the cultural one and maybe the economic one, but the actual power at the table, chingon power that can be like, I'm making decisions. What are your thoughts? I mean, you've been doing this for so long like me, so I just love to get your thoughts.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that we've broken through some barriers, but we have a bit of ways to go. I still think people need to see themselves in the political spaces, whether it's, local, at the local level, that's where it starts, to the national level.
Yeah.
Do people still use his pandering?
Let's just, can we just stay there for a second? Remember that when
Yeah.
Trump with the taco bowl, like,
Oh my God.
I'd love to hear your theory, but my theory is that type of campaigning, it's already hit the mainstream. Like, that message seems to have gotten to people who aren't Latino, but that's my thought. I don't have any data to prove that. It's just my gut. What about you?
I think part of that is people, I think just being aware of the power and the size of the Latino sphere.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's good, but it's still surface level. It is still surface level where they really only try to connect or really find ways to, like, oh, well, it's Hispanic Heritage Month or whatever. Right.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
we're forgotten the rest of the year. And I'm not here trying to complain or anything, pero we're Latinos 24/7. We need more than the Hispanic aisle, bro.
This is where I'm going, right? Because you've known me.
Yeah.
You've known me. You've known the good and the bad, like everything about Latino Rebel. Like, you've seen it from the beginning to the end.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of, maybe this is like me testing this out as a theory to, like, someone who's seen me do this work. And I love to get your thoughts because I'm sure you've evolved as well. I'm kind of like past the fact that we have to prove that we're here and that our culture is important. Like, I feel like I'm already past that and I don't have to explain that shit anymore. I just want to create great work.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about that? What are your thoughts about that?
No, it's completely true. And I think now the next generation of but back then we were called bloggers, but now they're content creators, right? That's kind of where it's going. You don't have to explain yourself. If you want, to reference your culture or your Latinidad or Spanish word here or there, or all in Spanish, you can do it. And people will have to really just like you have to look something up. And I think the next generation is actually doing that. Definitely digitally, definitely online, obviously, with all the content creators, and they're honing in to the cultura that makes them feel good now. And that's really what connects, I would say.
Yeah.
But the next step is like, okay, now what do we do with that? Are we just here to entertain ourselves? Or are we actually going to put, the power of our communities? And I say communities plural, porque it's not just one community. You know what I mean? And so that's the idea. Like, can we mobilize our communities to be involved?
I think you're absolutely right. That connection that people were like, oh, you're just a blogger.
Yeah.
I just think that there are better tools now to do exactly what we've always been doing, like uplift, comment, connect, be real, be authentic. Give me your story because, all right, like I said, when Joaquin said, hey, we need to talk to Mando, and I'm like, holy crap, I haven't talked to Mando. I think the last time I saw you was South by Southwest.
Probably, yeah.
Like when I was at Al Jazeera America. I haven't seen you in about 11 years, bro. Tell me how you've evolved over that time, because you've done a lot.
Yeah. It's a 15-year overnight success story. No, well, I think for me, where it started was really looking at, okay, how do I get my voice represented? There was a lot of roadblocks, a lot of barriers. I do feel that even today, Latinos accessing opportunities, there's still a lot of barriers. But for me, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it myself. I'm going to create content. And obviously, for me, I'm a taco journalist. So you got to give yourself a good title.
I mean, first of all, like taco journalist, you had me that when I first met you online, I was like, oh, this is the journalist I want to know.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And the thing is like with everything that we do, if we want to build relationships, we want to get to know each other, it's over food. And so for me, sharing a taco together, that's really at the core of getting to know you and getting to know me. And, what inspires us, our passion points, what frustrates us, todo, and that's the idea around taco journalism, where you really look at our own identities and what does that look like, and then digging into the culture. Yeah, and obviously, I'm in food writing, and I've been in food writing for a long time. So really going beyond, like, hey, this is a great meal and what have you, or look at this Instagram post, but looking at some of the issues that are related to the food itself. I'm talking about vendor rights, immigration, right?
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes, where at least when I got started, who was telling the story were people outside of the Mexican culture. And so I never thought it was represented well. And I'd rather, pull in and talk to, my abuela or my tia or my uncles in a backyard and talk to them about their experience. And really, that's kind of like my version of taco journalism. And so what I've been able to do is really focus in and start with a taco, because tacos is always, a great start. And we use that as a Trojan horse to understand communities, people, the gente, and the issues, like, yeah. And so
any recent anecdotes
where
you can say like tacos unite? Because I agree with you.
Yeah.
It breaks the ice,
Yes, it does. Yeah, no, and I think, this idea around, when you think of tacos and what you're sharing in, and then thinking about the roots of that food, sometimes that people are very hardcore about, oh, well, it's very Mexican. But to be honest, it is a mix and a mishmash on different things. When you take tacos al pastor, for example, it's you got that, the shawarma, as the cousin, the influence of that, the Lebanese, and, the tacos árabes were the original, al pastor. And then because of the access to pork and some of the chiles, then it becomes tacos al pastor. So when you think about kind of like how we talk about food and food identity, or like, where does our food come from? Do we ever wonder how, before it gets to, this nice plate, do we ever wonder who picks our food? Migrant farm workers do. And what are the issues that they're dealing with, as we like to explore some of those stories that allow for a deeper connection.
I hate to get into the trope of like who picks our food, because sometimes like I've talked about it too much, but I never see it in the national consciousness, right? Like we see faceless migrants.
Yep.
I mean, just what happened this past week with all the Puerto Rico bullshit.
Yeah.
I've been reminding people, it's like, hi, we have faces, we have a history, we have a voice, we have a complex colonial relationship. We are a people, like the West Side Stories and all the things, like this is all together. And it still comes to that perspective from food journalism. And you're not one of the only friends I know who's into food journalism. I have these conversations with them all the time. How do we put a human face on what you cover? And how does that become part of the national, political conversation? Because obviously that was missed in this cycle. That's a pre-election take.
Yeah, right. You have to pass the mic, You have to allow people to tell their stories in their own ways, and not really reinterpret a story for them. You have to allow them to tell those stories, but even in the language of their comfort, of their choice, whether it's English, whether it's Spanish. And that's kind of, what I try to do is like invite people or go to them and find their stories and be honest and real. I feel like it's one of my strengths is I allow people to feel comfortable in their own skin, and allow them to share their lived experience, because I have a similar lived experience. That growing up in poverty, in the projects, and then ultimately wanted to see people, that I grew up with, allow their story to be shared. I did a story in Austin around taco gentrification.
Yeah.
Where in one street, on Cesar Chavez, you could get a taco for $1.50, but at the end of the street, you have another taco, I think two tacos for like $20.
What the fuck?
Yeah. And so, what does that say is like, who has access and who are you inviting to eat some of this food? You know what I mean?
This is the way I look at it. pushing the culture and saying, hey, I'm going to create my own lane because I can't wait. And you did it. I did it. So many other people did it. And I'm not going to be humble about this. A little bit ahead of our time, Mando.
We out here.
Yeah, we out here like I still got to pay bills. But I get you because you've been so successful, like at least creatively. And I'm at a place right now where I'm kind of like, what is this boring name that Gustavo Arellano said was a good idea? You know, he was like, your name's boring. I'm like, that's the point, Gustavo Arellano. It's no longer Latino Rebels. I've kind of grown up.
Yeah.
But this gets to my point, right? Who are we 10 years, 15, 20, 30 years from now? And how does that weave into the American culture and the American political landscape?
Yeah.
Because we're going to get more complex. We're not, I'm going to make a prediction. The only prediction I'm going to make, the phrase Latinos are not a monolith can never be said ever again. I want it stricken from the dictionary. But you know what I'm saying? And like that's the only thing that's keeping me going to say like, hey, we've done this. It seems like Latinidad has become part of the mainstream, but you're missing the depth.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting about the name, that kind of came up. You do need an entry point.
I'm still excited that no one picked that name, bro.
I know, right?
I'm like, it's 2024. I'm like, I'll take it. Anyway.
All right. Yeah. You need an entry point, and then you can dig deeper into and get into the depth of our different identities and
right.
Whether it's a value set, whether it's comida, whether it's, anything that you celebrate. And so ultimately, I think we'll get there as long as, we can be our true selves.
Yeah. And do you think being your true self means that people who make decision-making powers understand that? Or is it just going to be like, I'm creating my own lane, get out of the way, join me? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like the hustle's a hustle.
I think it's a long-term, definitely more of a long-term strategy. If people still like 2024, you still have to explain things to them and they don't get it, or they're still kind of like 20 years behind, then, you're kind of barking up the wrong tree.
They're never going to get it. But remember like 15, 20 years ago, I'd be like, I really want this person to get it. I'm going to fight hard. Now I'm like, you're never going to get it.
Okay, you don't need it. You don't need it.
I don't need it. That's exactly right. So listen, Mando, where can people who don't know anything about you or are more intrigued about you, where can people find out more about you?
So my podcast, I have a podcast called Tacos of Texas. Anywhere you get your podcasts. I'm also on Instagram with United Tacos of America.
Yep.
Those are the easiest two ways to connect with me.
Mando Rayo, thank you so much for being on the Latino Newsletter Podcast with me.
Julio, it's a pleasure, and, keep doing what you're doing, bro.
Same here, bro. I'll talk to you soon. Wow. Joaquin was right. I needed to have some counter programming this week because I'm exhausted. And of all the people to have on the week before the election, Mando Rayo for the win. That's what we're talking about. The complexity of identity, Latinidad, how it's evolving, and how we are just going to create our own lanes. And we're done asking for permission. So I really, really appreciate Mando for being on the show. And, I got to have some tacos with him. All right, the Latino Newsletter Podcast is produced and edited by me, Julio Ricardo Varela, and Joaquin Cotler, who brought the guest this week. And again, I'm so excited. Thank you, Joaquin, for doing this. Mixing and sound design is also by Joaquin Cotler. The music is by Cast of Characters via Soundstripe. You can now donate to us at thelatinonewsletter.org and click on the donate tab. We are a nonprofit. Please give. Support independent Latino media. Or if you're on Spotify, there's a support button right in the podcast link. Click on it and support us. And if you like what you heard, share this podcast and rate us wherever you get your podcasts. We did get a really cool review that I shared on Twitter. Thank you so much. People were like, you're back, Julio. Yeah, I'm back. So thank you. And you can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, iHeartRadio. We're on YouTube. On Twitter, we are at Lat Newsletter. You can follow us on other social platforms at The Latino Newsletter. You can also send me an email, Julio at the Latino Newsletter.org. We've gotten a lot of emails the last couple of days about Puerto Rico, so I appreciate y'all. And we will be back next week with a post-election show. Peace out, y'all.